Get some!
Ice cream.
Welcome to the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian. Is this post-Justice Day? Well, that doesn't sound that great. But justice has arrived, let's put it that way. All right, so we have news, obviously, and some of it involves disgusting Republicans. And it's an interesting way of pronouncing it. And I'm gonna read you guys some reactions to my book, which I found to be interesting, but we'll do that throughout the show. It'll be fun for everybody. And I will take your reactions. That's why I wanted to mention up top in the comment section as well, if some of you have begun to read it. Okay, Kat, let's get started.
Well, let's begin with some bombshell allegations by Cassidy Hutchinson in her upcoming book. Let's discuss. Former Trump White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson, who served as a critical witness during the January 6th investigations, is now alleging that Rudy Giuliani sexually assaulted her on January 6th. So she details these allegations in her memoir as a 27-year-old titled Enough. It's coming out next week. And we hadn't heard of these allegations until today, after The Guardian got an advance copy of the book and noticed this portion of it and reported on it. So in the book, she writes that I find Rudy in the back of the tent with, among others, John Eastman. The corners of his mouth split into a Cheshire cat smile. Waving a stack of documents, he moves toward me like a wolf closing in on its prey. Okay, so he approaches her. This is basically backstage during Donald Trump's speech on January 6th. We have the evidence, it's all here. We're going to pull this off. Rudy wraps one arm around me or my body, closing the space that was separating us. I feel his stack of documents press into the small of my back. I lower my eyes and watch his free hand reach for the hem of my blazer. By the way, he says, fingering the fabric, I'm loving this leather jacket on you. His hand slips underneath my blazer, then my skirt. And then it gets even more creepy when you consider who was there, who saw it, and what she alleges happened next. I feel his frozen fingers trail up my thigh. He tilts his chin up. The whites of his eyes look jaundiced. My eyes dart to Trump advisor John Eastman, who flashes a leering grin. I fight against the tension in my muscles and recoil from Rudy's grip. Filled with rage, I stormed through the tent on yet another quest for Mark, referencing Mark Meadows, who she served as an assistant to during the Trump White House. So considering some of the other allegations that have come out in regard to Rudy Giuliani and his sexual misconduct, I'm inclined to lean in the direction of believing what she's saying here. And what I'm referring to is his former employee, Noelle Dunphy, who actually had recordings of him saying some pretty heinous things to her, sexually charged things about her, body parts and things like that. And so she's actually pressing charges against him as a result of that. But Cenk, I'm curious what you think about the allegations, but also the fact that these are allegations from 2.5 years ago that we only know about now because they're published in her book.
Yeah, so I'll get to the timing in a second. First, as to whether it's believable or not. It's unfortunately very believable, although it sounds super shocking to the rest of us. Like that, really? You're gonna have like these creepy old men putting their hands up the skirt of who at the time Cassidy was probably 25. of a 25-year-old girl. And remember, this is a party of family values. Oh, come here, morality, values, etc. She shows up thinking, oh my God, can't wait to help with family values. And this guy's like, and then reaches up. So it seems like unbelievable. Like if you put it in a movie, you're like, really? On the other hand, we saw Rudy with the young girl in that, was it a Borat movie? Yeah.
I think so.
Borat 2, that's right. And we covered that story for you guys too. And then the other woman who worked for him, I want to show.
Noelle Dunphy.
Yeah, Noelle Dunphy's quotes here are pretty devastating. According to her, now, so this is now a number of people, including some that we've seen on tape, right? And they say that they have this on tape as well, and then we're gonna find out in Dunphy's lawsuit. But I can't say the T word for breasts, but every time I say breasts, I understand that's what he apparently actually said. He said, come here, big breasts. Come on here, big breasts. Your breasts belong to me. And it goes on and on and on about how he owns them and how he can do anything he wants to them. And that's a person who works for him. I mean, it is sexual harassment on steroids. And so these guys are disgusting. They're absolutely disgusting. And apparently they got away with this at such an industrial scale that they're not even hesitating in doing it.
So let's get to the reaction from, or the response from the individuals that she names in the book, both Giuliani and John Eastman, who she alleges was there as the assault was taking place. So first, a Giuliani spokesperson and a political advisor to Giuliani. Bro, if you're a political advisor, it's time to quit. But anyway, Ted Goodman puts out a statement. It's fair to ask Cassidy Hutchinson why she is just now coming out with these allegations from 2.5 years ago as part of the marketing campaign for her upcoming book release. This is a disgusting lie against Mayor Rudy Giuliani. So on one hand, I believe her. I think that Rudy Giuliani is a terrible person for a litany of reasons, having to do with his attempts to overturn the election, his public behavior, just all sorts of stuff that he's engaged in. How he treated Noelle Dunphy based on the evidence she says that she has on tape. So this isn't a knock on what she is alleging, but I do think that it is not a good look when you withhold this information from the public for 2.5 years and keep it for your book. And the reason why I say that, the reason why I have a higher bar or higher standard when it comes to these types of specific allegations is because between then and now, how many women found themselves, associated with Giuliani who maybe would have wanted to know about what you experienced? How many women did he prey on between then and now that could have been warned ahead of time? That's the only reason why I'm concerned about it. And yeah, it looks terrible. It looks like she held on to it specifically for her book in order to make her book something that's, more sellable, more interesting, something that people might want to actually buy and read. And this is how the publishing world works. Let's keep it real. It is how it works. They want something salacious, they want something juicy, they want the gossip, they want the drama. So this is the selling point, and congratulations, it's maybe gonna help her sell her memoir. But at the same time, there are actual ramifications to withholding this information from the public. I understand when victims of sexual assault or rape don't want to come out to the public or don't want to report it to the authorities because we've seen how women are treated, how people are treated when they come out with these types of allegations. But that wasn't the reason why she withheld the information from the public for 2.5 years. She withheld it because she wanted to publish it in her book.
Yeah, well, look, I think you're generally right about the publication world, and I obviously just had experience with it, and I gotta say, based on what the other stories that I've heard and seen, I'm really lucky. So St. Martin's Press is the folks who handled my book that just came out, and I had some stuff in there that was, you can call it gossipy, you can call it whatever you want, but it was behind the scenes stuff that I thought was important to share. I've since shared that on the show, but they actually asked me to take it out, not because they didn't want it in there, but they were like, look, you got a really good book that is about the movement and it's not about you. Let's stick with that, and I think that it'll be a better message. And I was shocked at how moral they were. right? And because I know that little piece would have gotten, buzz in Washington, et cetera. And so, but when you have something like that, it is shocking. Because mostly Anna's right, in this publication world, people are like, give me dirt, give me dirt. And in fact, that also unfortunately creates a little bit more doubt into some things that go into books. Because you wonder, did you put it in there so that people would buzz about it and talk about it, et cetera. Now, in this case, since Rudy has a colorful history of these type of sexual harassments, assaults, et cetera, and given his sorry state of mind, her allegations are not as surprising and shocking as they should be. But I do agree with Anna, of course, on the timing. This is not a thing where, hey, I disagreed with someone behind the scenes on strategy. This is a serious issue. And you don't let a predator like that walking around without warning people, hey, watch out, don't be in a room alone with this guy. He did this when he wasn't alone in the room, when there was tons of people. I mean, that's the famous January 6th Trump speech, they're backstage. That's what I found amazing. So not only does he do that in full sight of everyone, so that gives you a sense of like, the entire team back there is mental. Like they see this creepy old man reach underneath a 25-year-old girl's skirt, while, by the way, they're giving public speeches about groomers and all that stuff, right? And not only do none of them react, none of them protect her. Jesus, conservatives, you ought to be embarrassed.
So John Eastman was allegedly in the room or in the area as it was happening.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting to.
So he's denying it. I have a statement from his spokesperson in just a moment.
Right, but according to Hutchinson, Eastman looked at her and gave like a little evil grin.
Disgusting. Like
you would think like, if imagine if Rudy is doing that to you, whether you're a guy or girl, imagine he's got his hand on your thigh inside your clothes. And you look over for help, and the other creepy guy's like, you're like, oh my God, Jesus Christ, what's wrong with these people? Now, again, it's Hutchinson's version of the story. So now we'll give you his, I'm sure, denial, Eastman's.
So Charles Burnham, a lawyer for Eastman, categorically denied Hutchinson's account, and in a statement to CNN called the accusations libelous. In his statement, he said that Eastman, quote, does not recall ever having met Ms. Hutchinson and did not even know who she was until her public testimony before the select committee in the House of Representatives in June of 2022. That was the House Select Committee investigating January 6th, in which Hutchinson served as a witness for. And her testimony was incredibly important. She shed light on many things that the public did not know about what was happening behind the scenes when it came to attempts to essentially steal the election or overturn the results of the election and what happened on January 6th. So I don't, aside from sharing the details of what she's alleging in her book, I don't know what we're supposed to do with this information, right? Because she didn't go to the authorities for it. She went to Mark Meadows. So I'd like some journalists to maybe reach out to Mark Meadows and ask him, so did you know about this? Did she really reach out to you? What happened on that day? What do you know? Especially when she's now being threatened with like defamation lawsuits, right? But I don't know for sure, no one can know for sure. I can only tell you what I suspect and where I lean on the issue. I believe her, but at the same time, I just think it would have been helpful to other people to have that warning 2.5 years ago when the incident happened.
Yeah, and just guys, like I think part of the warning is be careful. People are not who they appear to be in public, especially politicians. And so this is now how many stories in a row of Republicans or conservatives who talk about values and then behind the scenes do massive sexual harassment in the workplace. So, but when you hear them talking about how they view women's rights as secondary, be careful, they might mean it. And it looks like a lot of times they do mean it in their personal lives.
All right, let's move on. We've got an update on the Congress's failed attempts to pass a government spending or funding bill. So let's get to that.
This is not conservative republicanism. This is stupidity. The idea that we're going to shut the government down When we don't control the Senate, we don't control the White House. These people can't define a win. They don't know how to take yes for an answer. It's a clown show. You keep running lunatics, you're going to be in this position.
That was a Republican congressman, Mike Lawler from New York, essentially calling out members of his own party for the way they've been behaving and their fails in attempting to pass a government funding bill. Now, the far right House Freedom Caucus is basically proving to be a bit of a political liability for the Republican parties on this very issue. The party is fractured on the legislation. And so let's give you an update on what happened this week so far. So look, unless Congress pass and the White House agree to a resolution to fund the federal government beyond September 30th, it will shut down on October 1st. So time is of the essence. They always wait until the last minute to actually take this seriously. But here we are, they haven't come up with an agreement. And regardless of whether Kevin McCarthy, the House Speaker, agrees to what the more conservative wing of the Republican Party wants, it is very unlikely that that version of the bill will get passed by the Senate, which is controlled by Democrats. Now, with that said, on Tuesday, Speaker McCarthy canceled a procedural vote on a spending proposal after it became clear that the measure did not have the adequate Republican support to pass. Separately, a bill to fund the Department of Defense failed a procedural test on Tuesday when 5 Republicans voted in opposition. Now, the temporary stopgap bill proposed Sunday would have triggered a 1% cut to current fiscal levels, but keep the government funded until October 31st, basically buying them some time to negotiate a more long-term bill. Even if the measure had made it out of the House, it was expected to be rejected in the Senate. So the far right wing of the Republican Party seems to be a little delusional about what they can actually accomplish, because whether they want to accept it or not, Democrats do control the Senate. And if they're planning on passing through a spending bill that would essentially provide no aid to Ukraine and cuts to funding for the Department of Justice so they can provide cover for Donald Trump, it's just not gonna work out. The Senate is gonna send that bill back and say, no, we're not gonna pass that. So it's a mess, and I don't know what's gonna happen moving forward, but currently there are at least 15 House Republicans who are opposed to the spending legislation that was on offer in the House, that 1 month stopgap bill. And given the GOP's 221 to 212 majority, that is more than enough to essentially tank it. So Kevin McCarthy is in a little bit of trouble here. And what do the hard right Republicans want exactly? Like, that's the big question, right? And one of the most vociferous among them is Representative Matt Gaetz, who claims that what he wants is very clear. Let's watch.
We can't blame Joe Biden and the Democrats for why the Republican-controlled House of Representatives hasn't passed single-subject spending bills. That's our fault. So we have to deal with that. We will likely have to endure some degree of a shutdown.
So he does have a little bit of a point when it comes to the single subject spending bills. So the government is funded through 12 annual appropriations bills, each of which funds a different part of the federal government. In recent years, some or all of these 12 bills have been rolled into a single omnibus package and approved together. Apparently, Matt Gaetz and the House Freedom Caucus had received some promises from Kevin McCarthy that he would pursue the single issue bills. And clearly that's not the case when it comes to the government funding bill. But as you're about to hear from Mitch McConnell in the Senate, he's the Senate minority leader. Listen, if you're using this debate as a way of getting policy done, I got news for you. Let's watch.
I think all of you know I'm not a fan of government shutdowns. I've seen a few of them over the years. They never have produced a policy change, and they've always been a loser for Republicans.
They've always been a loser for Republicans. So Cenk, what do you think about this so far?
So first, that Republican Congressman, Mike Lawler, sounded like me. Wasn't that interesting? The way that he was calling them lunatics and what the hell do you want, etc. I haven't seen Republicans this split in a long time. And part of the reason for that is because they showed up to the theater expecting the regular play. but they got something else entirely. They showed up for Les Mis and got cats. And so what the hell's going on here? Because normally the way that this play works is the Republicans go, oh, we are going to shut the government down unless you give us extra spending cuts, which by the way, they already did. They did it earlier. And it was over the debt ceiling, and then Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden got a deal, and they got spending cuts because that's how the game is played. Biden wants to do the spending cuts too. He just has to play along with this game and then go, oh, I can't believe Kevin McCarthy made me do it, right? And so they shook on it and they had a deal, and it was supposed to go through this issue as well. So there was supposed to be no debt ceiling fight and no government shutdown. And what did the Republicans do? They reneged. Number one, because they're Republicans. You can't trust them at all. These Republican politicians are all uniformly outrageous liars, right? That's why even Republican congressmen are calling the rest of the Republicans lunatics now, because that's who they are. So now that regular play got interrupted by these insane demands. Hey, I want the entire Department of Justice defunded. What? Okay, I want the Pentagon stop being woke. What does that even mean, right? So why are they doing this is the natural question.
Because when the government doesn't get the spending bill or the funding bill passed, they don't have to worry about their salaries being on the line. And I think their salaries should be on the line.
Oh, of course.
I think the number one thing that should happen every time they play games with this legislation, which is literally every year.
Every year.
Every year. I'm so sick of the same story every freaking year. The press loves it. They love the drama, right? Yeah. This story's been brewing for like a few weeks now. And I didn't want to cover it until this week because you don't need to know every minor update to the story because nothing is serious. They don't take the job seriously. They don't take any of it seriously, right? Oh, national parks will get defunded. Who cares? Oh, people who need food stamps aren't going to be able to access the service as a result of the government not being funded. Who cares? No, I care. A lot of people care. A lot of Americans care. They work their asses off, they pay their taxes, and they expect you to do your damn jobs. And since they're not willing to do their damn jobs, how about your salaries are on the line? How about there is a freeze on your salaries until you do your goddamn jobs and pass the legislation? How about that?
And I'll add one more thing to it. First of all, Anna's idea is indisputable. Of course, they won't do it because it's their salaries. They'll cut your salaries, but not their own. But I would say not only freeze their salaries, but every day that they are in a government shutdown, they never get that money back, right? Because sometimes the salaries are frozen, then they get a lump sum at the end. No lump sum for you. No cookies for you. You're not showing up to work. You're not getting paid. That's what the average American worker has to deal with. That's what these scummy politicians should have to deal with. Okay, so but to finish my thought, the reason why the script is different now is because the far right is doing tons of grassroots fundraising. So unfortunately, now that's a good thing overall, okay, because you don't want it coming from corporations, etc. You want it coming from the grassroots. But unfortunately, that makes them desperate for attention. Anything to do with attention so they can send an email going, I've been attacked by Kevin McCarthy. I've been attacked by Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, etc. So then they raise more money, get more attention, get more attention. And so the point is the attention itself, the drama itself. The point isn't something that they actually want. Bingo. That's why you can't solve it, because they don't actually want anything. So for example, if Matt Gaetz stuck with that one issue and said, well, look, they said that we would vote on these bills individually. And by the way, that's a totally fair ask.
Agreed.
Look at us being fair. That's the right wing asking for that, and it's fair.
And he was promised that. To be fair, in addition to being fair about the whole point of single issue bills, he was promised that, right? In the whole debt ceiling fight, McCarthy said, listen, if you play ball, if you cooperate, Matt Gaetz, I'll give you what you want with the single issue bills. But obviously that's not happening, and Gaetz is right to be upset at McCarthy reneging on that promise. So I give him credit for that, but that is not the only thing he is claiming to want. He wants things that are literally delusional and undoable.
Yeah, and guys, we're telling you, if he just went for that, he'd actually win. And that's why I told progressives, like, go for paid family leave. Then you'll get paid family leave, right? There's a way to insist on something and have reasonable demands that you could actually deliver on, especially if you're right about them. But That's why you see the unreasonable demands, because they don't want to win. They want the attention for as long as possible. For them, that is the win, not the resolution. They don't give a damn about you. The resolution helps you. It doesn't help them. The conflict helps them. That's why you're gonna see tons of media coverage about this, tons of like, oh, what's going to happen? We all know what's going to happen. So right now, there's definitely going to be a shutdown because they're asking for insane things like, oh, give me the moon and I want it in Matt Gaetz' pocket. If you don't give me the moon in Matt Gaetz' pocket, we're not going to vote yes. Well then, lunatic, how the hell are we supposed to have a conversation?
You know, what's also really interesting is that the moderates are getting, the moderates within the Republican Party, believe it or not, they do exist to some extent. They're the individuals who won in swing districts, districts that Biden won during the 2020 presidential election. They're concerned about what the House Freedom Caucus is demanding and how it's gonna hurt them politically. And so get a load of this. Some hard right Republicans support lowering the top line budget to about 1.4 trillion, which is below the 1.6 trillion agreed upon by McCarthy and President Joe Biden earlier this year. That was the agreement in the midst of that whole debt ceiling fight, right? However, moderates have said they have no incentive to cut spending further. I never thought I would see a day where Republicans would be on the record saying, no, we actually don't want to cut funding. But in this case, it's the moderate Republicans who ran and won in swing districts, and they see the far right wing of the Republican Party as a political liability. And to be sure, they are a political liability to the moderates. Now, Democrats have ridiculed the idea that they should vote for a lower spending number than what McCarthy and Biden had agreed to back in May, and they're right to feel that way. So House Republicans' push for lowering spending has led them to seek cuts to the IRS, Securities and Exchange Commission, and Consumer Product Safety Commission. Gives you a sense of what the priorities are for these Republicans, right? Anything that benefits ordinary people, they want to cut funding to. Interesting. Now, Democrats have also sharply criticized the proposed cuts to the education budget, which Representative Rosa DeLauro, the top Democrat on the House Appropriations Committee, said would lead to 22,000 fewer teachers. And other things that would happen when the government doesn't get the funding it needs to continue operating. Hundreds of thousands of federal workers will not receive a timely paycheck. Government workers who are considered essential will be forced to work without getting paid. They will get paid later once the legislation finally passes. But these are people who have families, who have mortgages, who have to pay rent. They basically have to put their livelihoods on the back burner while they keep working because Congress can't be bothered to do its job. And honestly, take a look at the situation at hand realistically and move forward based on what the facts are. And the facts are a far right-wing government funding bill ain't gonna pass in the Senate. It's just not.
Yeah, so look, these guys, like I said, they don't want it to pass. So at the end of the day, how are they going to actually fund the government? Because at some point they've got to go forward, right? And last time, if you remember, we had the longest government shutdown. It was 28 days. And the reason it got resolved is because eventually the air traffic controllers stopped showing up to work because they hadn't gotten paid in about a month. So they're like, well, good luck with the airplanes. We'll see you guys later, okay? And then people panicked, and then they resolved the government shutdown. The reason you need that kind of panic is because Republicans don't care about government workers not getting paid. None of the things that get affected in a shutdown affect the rich at all.
And it doesn't affect them either. So by the way, your salary should be frozen. And those sweet, sweet health benefits that you get, frozen.
Oh my God, if you froze their health care benefits while the government is shut down, oh, they will all panic. What if we get sick? Exactly.
They have no problem essentially putting all, like, how many people are we talking about here? I mean, untold numbers of government workers who literally have to put their livelihoods on the back burner. They don't care about that at all.
So they're never gonna care about those guys. So that's why they have no incentive not to do the shutdown. So at the end of the day, we're gonna have to have an emergency against something like the air traffic controllers. And at that point, probably the Republicans, some portion of the Republicans will vote with some portion of the Democrats to get a bill to go through, because the lunatics are never going to say yes.
When we come back from the break, we have an update on how Donald Trump is polling among Black and Latino voters. Have the indictments had an impact on his support? No, we've got that and more. You don't want to miss it. We'll see you then. Ice cream.
All right, back on TYT. I'm gonna go to Twitch first because C-Small451 has my favorite comment of the day so far. Go away, Cenk. It's our private day with Anna.
You guys are so sweet.
Okay.
The private day with Anna will happen tomorrow.
Yes, yeah. I forgot to mention it. I forgot that today was Wednesday.
People are liking the Anna solo hour.
Well, people are saying it. There's nothing I can do about it. So guys, I'm going to New York for that Powerhouse Arena thing on that's nearly sold out, by the way. tyt.com/events if you want to see me this Friday, just 2 days from now, in Brooklyn, and there it is, tyt.com/events. It's called the Powerhouse Arena. Okay, and so I got to take a flight there, so I won't be on the show tomorrow and Friday. And so Anna's gonna do the solo hour tomorrow. We flip the days. We're gonna do the same thing next week because I've got to go to DC next week. But thank you for caring about the solo Anna hour, and I love a bunch of you guys wrote in about that. Cenk's left tricep of fury said, Cenk on a Wednesday.
Yeah, read more of those comments.
Okay. Sina Hogaboom wrote in, Anna looks mad that Cenk is here today. No ice cream for you, Uber. Okay.
No, I'm not mad at Cenk at all. Look, I wish people cared about others. That's all. I don't want to say I'm mad at Cassidy Hutchinson. I'm just mad at where people's priorities are, right? Because anyway, just let's move on.
All right. Well, I've got some thoughts on that too, or the members too, which I'll get to in a second. Okay, Gabby Marita writes in, because apparently today's bus nuts day with Cenk, which is okay, which I rather enjoy actually.
My favorite.
Yeah, and his favorite. So everybody's a winner here. Gabby Marita wrote in, I see Cenk is wearing the shirt that every man over the age of 30 in America owns.
I like that shirt. That's actually maybe the one shirt of Cenk's that I like.
Okay, now it's the one shirt of Cenk's that I like.
Cenk,
okay,
it's the only one that's not in tatters.
Okay, yeah, all right. I see we're building a theme. Oh yeah, you know what? Now you made me do it. Okay, I'm gonna read some reviews of Justice is Coming.
Oh my God.
See how you like them apples on Goodreads. You could leave them there too. Oh no, here we go again. Here's the first one. Where's the book, Chunk? A bunch of right-wing trolls went in before the book even got out and put on Goodreads like, oh yeah, I didn't even read the book. Well, then why are you reviewing it? Anyways, others wrote in, yes. Why is no one else saying this? That's very sweet, appreciated. Gentleman Prude wrote in, with all of the author's generalizations, I really wanted to dislike this book. But having found myself agreeing with 99% of what he said and totally seeing the value of educating the public with the books just like this, I finished it thinking, one, that this is common sense, but that two, there's probably millions of Americans that need to read this. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying tyt.com/justice. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, and Nikki Canning and Hey MJ as well. They just became American Heroes and Young Turks members by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube. You can do likewise at tyt.com/members. facebook.com/join.
I would like to give some credit to an American hero. At least on a very specific issue. So in regard to our last segment about the government funding, Representative Angie Craig's McCarthy Shutdown Act would make sure lawmakers don't get paid if the federal government closes due to a spending fight. So I love that proposal. It ain't gonna go nowhere, but she's making a point and I'm here for it.
She should go on TV, she should come on here, she should publicize that everywhere. Because I'll tell you what, that'll poll at approximately 98%. And the other 2% will be Matt Gaetz and his family.
Who's eyeing a run for governor in Florida.
Oh, gee, I wonder why he's pulling, look at me, daddy, look at me.
Yeah, 100%. Anyway, let's move on to something pretty awful. And it's coming at a time when there is a migrant crisis. Both people living in these communities and the migrants themselves are dealing with a horrific situation. But nonetheless, this is the kind of vision that Donald Trump has for immigration. So Donald Trump, of course, is known for posting all sorts of terrible and offensive things on social media. That's not new. But today, he decided to post the following in regard to the migrant crisis in the United States. It says, problem solved with a photo of alligators. New border security will work for food. Now, it's being passed off as a joke, which I'd be willing to believe, even though it's a disgusting joke at a time when people are really suffering, both the migrants and the local communities that are trying to house the migrants, that everyone is suffering. Congress is doing nothing to reform immigration, completely abandoned. These communities are completely abandoned by the federal government on this specific issue. And this is what Trump puts out into the world about it. And I'd be willing to maybe consider it as just a joke, except for the fact that he literally proposed doing this. Do you remember that, Cenk?
Of course I do, you crazy. The snakes, the wires, tell us all about it.
Yes. So we actually reported on this back in 2019. And so the New York Times had reported through Michael Shear and Julie Hirschfeld that Trump genuinely thought that doing something like that would be a good idea in controlling immigration. Privately, the president had often talked about fortifying a border wall with a water-filled trench stocked with snakes or alligators, prompting aides to seek a cost estimate. That's how far it went. They decided to look into a cost estimate. He wanted the wall electrified with spikes on top that could pierce human flesh. After publicly suggesting that soldiers shoot migrants if they threw rocks, the president backed off when his staff told him that was illegal. But later, in a meeting, aides recalled, he suggested that they shoot migrants in the legs to slow them down. That's not allowed either, they told him.
So if you know Donald Trump, and even if you're a fan of Donald Trump, you know he said those things. And in fact, a lot of the fans of Donald Trump probably think like, good. But don't pretend that that's not the exact kind of thing that Donald Trump would ask. And so, and every time, by the way, there's a report from people inside his own administration, by definition, very right-wing Republicans, man goes, I don't believe it, la 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 la. Okay, so guys, like innocent joking between each other, no problem. Okay, you want to put this up on Facebook, now you're making it public. I'm saying if you were to do it, right? You're making it public, it's distasteful, especially because people recently died there, right?
There's kids,
yeah,
tons of kids.
What Abbott did was, that's the governor of Texas, he started putting barbed wire in the river. So as they were trying to swim around the barbed wire or trying to figure out what to do, a bunch of people got washed out, including kids, okay, and died. So you shouldn't do it either. But the former president of the United States, and so the guy who would be in charge of immigration policy, and that earlier was, and that actually seriously considered this inside the White House, he definitely shouldn't be joking around like this. I know that they love that he jokes. I know that, I'm not unaware of that, and the Democrats are too stiff. But are there no bounds of reason? Are there no bounds of decency? I mean, you guys say you're pro-life. A whole bunch of people have died in that river.
Including kids.
Including kids, and you guys are, I mean, are you okay with it? Are you good with it? I know you wanted the barbed wire and all that stuff. I guarantee you a decent percentage of MAGA, if you told them electric fence that would electrocute human beings and alligators and snakes, unfortunately a big percentage would probably say yes.
Look, and for me, it's not just the cruelty of this specific post that has me irritable and upset. It's that we're dealing with a very real problem, right? Like a problem that is leading to quite a bit of human suffering. And this is an issue that, again, the federal government has completely abandoned. They love to campaign on it. They love to engage in political theater on this issue, but they don't take it seriously. There's no real appetite for immigration reform. There's no appetite in solving the problem, hiring more immigration judges so we can, speed up the process of these asylum hearings. Who cares? Who cares? I mean, they got elected, but were they elected to actually do something beneficial for their constituents? Of course not. It's all a game to them. It's all fun for them. So look, that's more commentary about Congress, because Congress hasn't even really broached the topic since 2014, when attempts to reform immigration fell apart during the Obama administration. But since then, there really hasn't been a serious effort in reforming our immigration system.
Yeah, and so I asked for an army of lawyers to go down to the border, to go through these asylum hearings quicker, et cetera. During the Trump era, I asked for the same thing during the Biden era. Biden has funded way more judges, but not nearly enough. Now, if you're a conservative and you go, I don't want you to spend my money on judges, who needs the judges? And Trump at one point, of course, said, what are judges for anyway? Well, if you're a crook, of course you don't like judges, right? But guys, conservatives, you should want that. Why should you want it? Because right now, those asylum seekers have a legal right to be here, and their cases take about 3 to 4 years to adjudicate. That means they are staying here undocumented for that. And I know that you get lied to all the time, and they say, there's no border, the borders are open. That's not true. They do their best that they can in maintaining the border, otherwise a lot more people would come in, and there is a process, right? And when they catch people, or people go to the right places to say, I'm seeking asylum, there's a process, and when they lose their asylum cases, they are sent back. I know that you've never heard that in right-wing media your whole life, but a huge percentage of them are sent back when they lose the case. So you want the lawyers to speed up that process, both for their sake and for our sake, right? But instead, we get dumbass ideas like alligators at the border. I mean, Trump is like a Austin Powers villain. He's not even a James Bond villain. It's an Austin Powers villain. Like, can I get some snakes in a river? Why would you want the snakes in the river? And the snakes, I mean, like, he's just so painfully stupid.
So Axios had reported what Trump's policy proposals would be if he wins the 2024 presidential election. Let's give you a little taste of that. Ramping up ideological screening for people legally applying to come into the country. Ideological screening. So what does that entail exactly?
That's the most absurd thing. Can you imagine if Bernie Sanders was president and said, or any Democrat, Joe Biden, doesn't matter, and he said, we're gonna do ideological screenings at the border. Okay, what do you think the right-wing reaction would be? They're only letting the communists in, we know it. They're shutting out all the right-wingers because they're trying to win the elections by doing this. This is just but they do it willy-nilly, and I guarantee you, every right-winger that looks at that goes, that's right, we should discriminate and make sure we only let right-wingers in. What happened to your rage about fairness and democracy and all that? Anyways, okay, but by the way, if I'm wrong, I'm happy to hear it, then go complain to Trump and the Republicans and say, how dare you do ideological or suggest ideological screenings at the border?
They want to do this to prevent communists from coming into the country. A lot of the people that are trying to come into the country and seek asylum are Venezuelans. Pretty sure they're not coming here for communism.
They're running away from extreme socialism in Venezuela. So, but there's no logic required. All you need is gators to be a Republican.
Seeking to end birthright citizenship. I mean, what are we gonna do with this? What are we gonna do with this? Seeking to end birthright citizenship for children of undocumented immigrants. So where would they be citizens of if they're not citizens of the United States? Trump considered this as a president, but today's conservative-leaning Supreme Court has given his team more confidence about taking on an inevitable legal fight. It's now been dubbed inevitable.
I mean, it's absurd. Look, there's already ridiculous discrimination that's not even constitutional. Where if you come into the country and you're a naturalized citizen, you can't run for president. But on top of that, then Stephen Miller and the Republicans suggested naturalized citizens, should they remain citizens? And what is going to be the basis for their decision? Are you a Republican or aren't you? Will you listen to the dictator and the tyrant and do as he bids you or not? Otherwise, we're going to kick you out. Kick you out what? We're 100% US citizens. Okay, I mean, you want to talk about like, they're like with inanimate objects like guns. They're like, come and take it from my cold dead hands. Meanwhile, they're like, oh, forget like the furniture or the guns. We're going to kick you out and send you to a country that you don't even live in, haven't lived in decades, etc. And now they're coming after birthright citizenship.
It's insane.
They've never lived in that other country. Never in their entire lives.
They weren't born in that other country. They're not citizens of any other country. Where exactly are you expecting them to go?
They don't care about the US Constitution at all. So if you're a right winger, please stop mentioning the Constitution. You don't believe in it, so please shut your mouth about it. And you don't love America. If you're like, well, I like America if the person born here is white. But if they're not white, all of a sudden, I don't like American citizens that are born here.
I mean, certainly right wingers who subscribe to this garbage, right? And I don't think a lot of them do. I think
a lot of them do, to be honest. We could disagree about that. But I bet you a huge percentage of Republicans would be like, take away birthright citizenship from brown people. Why didn't we think of this earlier? Why do you think they're proposing it? Look, not every Republican thinks that way. But, I'd love a poll on it. And it's going to be a big number.
I would love to see a poll. I have no idea. We're both guessing. But I'd like to believe that most people, including most Republican voters, don't want to see migrants, including migrant children, like treated with alligators and snakes as they're seeking asylum at the border. I mean,
minimum 30% of Republicans. I'm afraid it'll be 60.
I don't know. We're guessing. I have no idea. But please, don't make me feel bad for having faith in people. Like, please.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay. Now, extend another potential proposal from Trump, extending Texas's controversial floating barriers in the Rio Grande. So obviously that is what Cenk was referring to earlier. Apparently they looked at that model and thought, no, maybe we should extend that. And then of course, completing his border wall. A lot of people donated a lot of money to Steve Bannon to complete that border wall. And he spent it on himself and you pardoned him, Trump. Why is that?
Oh, by the way, the other guys who did that scam along with him, convicted, went to prison. But keep sending money to Republicans. They'll just laugh at you, their ass off at you on the yacht that they bought with your money. And last question for you guys. If you're a Republican, you love Donald Trump. And now he tells you he's going to build a wall. Wait, didn't he say that last time? Why did it take him 3.5 years before he remembered that he was supposed to build a wall? And then you remember in the last 6 months as he's campaigning and trying to get your votes, he remembered his lie about building a wall. And all of a sudden he's like, oh yeah, I meant wall. But remember, he didn't forget the corporate tax cuts. He gave them the biggest tax cut in American history. His #1 priority is to the rich. He just treats the rest of you as suckers.
So there was a poll, Cenk, by The Economist and YouGov, and it showed that 60% of US adults surveyed said that the country should continue to provide citizenship to all who were born here, regardless of their parents' status. Only a quarter said that the country should not continue it, while 15% said they were not sure. Now let's get to political ideology and where Republicans stand. 42% of Republicans said they want the policy to continue, compared to 40% who said they want the policy to end.
And so I said minimum 30%. You could rewind the tape. I'm worried that it's 60.
They heard. You were right.
I was literally going to say the number 40. Okay. So, anyways, by the way, you could take that as good news. Wow, 60% of Republicans don't want to take away constitutional rights from people that don't look like them. Okay, I'll take it as a silver lining in this story.
I have faith in you guys. Find it in your hearts to understand the situation better. And instead of taking that rage out on people who are desperate, I would say take the rage out on members of Congress who have no interest in solving this issue at all. Anyway, for now though, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about why Trump has continued to increase his support among Black and Latino voters. Ice cream.
TYT. Let's go to members as usual. America needs a reboot, writes, and I'm going to refer to Justice is Coming as a cookbook. Interesting. Cenk sautés the elite, fillets the Democrats, and roasts the Republicans, and at the end serves up the American people a delicious dessert. Well, that's lovely. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. We were thinking of titles for Anna's non-existent book called Cooking with Salt, maybe. She cooks up some of her political opponents with salt. Let's see what happens. Okay, Boomer Dragon Cat said, hey Anna, for every time you said Congress is doing nothing, it could be the theme of the show today. In fact, Congress is doing nothing could be the theme of every show. Well, certainly these days that's true. Wolf Dragon Donna wrote in, ha ha ha, you guys are hilarious with the clothes. Anna, FYI, you're the only one who can tell Cenk's shirts are tattered. The camera doesn't pick that up. And I have to laugh about the comment about today's shirt. Everyone used to buy my dad that style checkered, and it became known as the dad shirt.
Really? I don't know, I like it. It's professional, but also kind of like sassy.
A little playful.
It's a little playful. It looks like maybe he might go on a picnic later.
Oh, for sure.
You know, might take the sports coat off, just have the button-down shirt on, maybe lay a nice blanket at the park.
That sounds lovely, doesn't it?
Right?
So, and I love picnics, except lying down or
True.
Let's do it on a park bench or something. I mean, let's get a little table going, okay?
Tables are good.
Okay, so Little Mac McGee, I read your post. It's too long to read here, but you're wonderful for saying that. And I love that this is the right community for you. And thank you too, you guys make this happen. Okay, Tattered Remnant wrote in with a critique. How long did it take for Cenk to write his book? And we are to castigate someone who wants to make money after her trauma instead of giving it away for free. But guys, I didn't have some sort of like powerful story of sexual assault that I salted away in the book. And so it's not like we're like, hey, I can't believe it took her 2.5 years to write the book. My God, I would never say that, right? But anyways, but I wanted to read that as a counter to Hamilton Slade, who said on Twitch, I would argue she had no right to withhold it. She had knowledge of a crime by someone who worked for the president and sat on it. So those are the two different points of view. I get both sides of the point, but you don't have to blame, like we don't have to get angry at Cassidy Hutchinson. We're just saying we wish she would have said that earlier, but of course the real villain here is unquestionable. It's Rudy Giuliani, and everybody agrees to that. Okay, let's keep going. Let's go to Jeremy Jimenez saying in Super Chat, just bought the audiobook, can't read physical books anymore because of diabetic retinopathy. But I'm so glad you bought the audiobook and thank you, I appreciate you, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news.
All right. Despite all of the negative coverage in regard to Donald Trump's rhetoric and in some cases policies toward Black and Latino voters, fact of the matter is he has been just increasing his support more and more. Every poll shows that he is getting more support among Black and Latino voters. In fact, there was an analysis done on this very issue in the Washington Post where they took the average of the 5 top quality polls on the issue, and here's what they found. Multiple polls in recent weeks have shown Trump performing historically well among Black and Hispanic voters in head-to-head matchups with Biden, helping put him neck and neck with Biden in a way he rarely was during their 2020 matchup, a point that you like to make a lot, Cenk, in regard to the, basically risks the Democratic Party is taking by just going along with Biden running for re-election.
Yeah, I just want to give you guys one data point here that's that I wish I'd said all throughout. When Biden barely beat Trump in the Electoral College by 44,000 votes in 2020, on that day he had not just in polling, but in the actual results. He had a 4.5 point lead in the popular vote, 4.5 points. So when you see him trailing by a half a point to a point to Trump, understand even beating Trump by half a point isn't going to do it. Beating him by 2 points isn't going to do it. He needs to beat Trump by at least 4.5 points in the popular vote to win the Electoral College. He ain't anywhere near 4.5 points up on Donald Trump. So we are headed for an iceberg, and I cannot get anyone to change the direction of the ship. TYT.com/dropout to do that. Go ahead, Anna.
All right, so let's get to what the average of the polls indicate. So across 5 high quality polls that have broken out non-white voters in the past month, Trump is averaging, I can't even believe this, 20% of black voters and 42% of Hispanic voters. So that's not based on one poll, that's based on an average of 5 separate polls. And just to give you an idea of how stunning those numbers are, no Republican presidential candidate in the last 50 years has approached receiving 20% of the black vote. Republicans took 18% in 1972 and 16% in 1976, but they have not taken more than 12% of the black vote since then, okay? Now, some individual polls are even more alarming. So this is not based on an average. I want to focus on the Quinnipiac University poll because the numbers on that one specific poll are even higher. Trump actually takes as much as 25% of black voters in a recent Quinnipiac poll and 47% of Hispanic voters in a recent CBS News poll. Numbers that would appear implausible even if those voters have trended toward him significantly. Now, this wouldn't appear to be strictly about Trump. Apparently, Fox News's pollsters just last week tested 7 2024 Republicans against Biden, and just about every GOP candidate was near 20% support among black voters.
Yeah, ironically, the one that wasn't was Tim Scott at 15%.
Yeah, Tim Scott performed the worst among them.
Yeah.
No, Democrats have taken the black, especially the black vote, for granted in this country. Let's keep it 100. Okay, the rhetoric isn't enough anymore. It just isn't. When you promise that you're gonna pass a voting rights bill and then you don't even try, there are consequences for that. Biden's promise to pass a voting rights bill was tied to the 2 Senate runoff races in Georgia. You know who came out to vote in droves? You wanna know who did the organizing, the canvassing, the hard work on the ground necessary to get the voters to the polls to vote for the Democrats in the Senate? It was black voters, black organizers, black canvassers. The promise was that in return, they're gonna get at least a fight on a voting rights bill. He didn't even try. Okay, so when you make promises you don't keep, there are consequences for that. I mean, you should have noticed that with Obama, right? I think the Obama administration and some of their failures, their response to the 2008 economic collapse led to Trump. There were consequences for it, but apparently no one learns anything.
Yeah, so the average for the last 50 years has been Republican presidential candidates getting 9% of the black vote. So if it goes to 20%, let alone Hispanics going up to 42%, the Democrat has almost no chance of winning. Those numbers are unrecoverable. So they barely win when it's 9%. They cannot sustain 20% of black folks leaving the Democratic Party and voting for the Republican. So why is it happening? There's 3 main reasons. One is what Anna just mentioned, enough with taking them for granted and never delivering on any of your promises. Look, there's tons of issues that are not related to race, but that still affect black people just as much as they affect anyone else that they didn't deliver on. But on voting rights, that was a very specific promise that they made. And they were adamant about that promise. And they painted it as, of course, no brainer, no question. There was 2 things that they said were like definites: voting rights and minimum wage, higher minimum wage. And those were the first 2 things they threw under the bus. And they did it pretty spectacularly. They didn't fight 1% for it. They immediately were like, oh, the Republicans object, then forget it. They threw it away and lit it on fire. Biden didn't do 1% fight on it. And so, by the way, they would have needed to get rid of the filibuster, but they did get rid of the filibuster to lift the debt ceiling in the first 2 years, because that was their beloved stock market. So it is unquestionable that Biden and the Democratic Party valued the stock market higher than they valued black voters that gave them that victory. So now, if Democrats in Washington see this segment, they'll want to shoot the messenger, us. They'll say, shush, shush, don't tell people what we did. Then they won't vote for us. Brother, the news is out. Okay, and yeah, I'm in journalism. I tell people what actually happened, not your BS propaganda. Okay, do better, do better. Now the other two reasons. Well, they've become elitists, both like in terms of optics and in terms of who they serve. So Trump is going around ordering people McDonald's. It's optics, it's not real. Trump's doesn't actually deliver for anyone, but he's constantly going to the auto workers, giving, acting like he cares about the average guy. Meanwhile, Biden and the Democrats are like, we passed this semiconductor bill. Well, congrats, brother, and maybe that's necessary, but you're missing the optics and the marketing of politics, let alone the substance.
Right, no, let me jump in on that.
Okay, and then I got a third one.
Okay, so yeah, hold on that. So look, there's policy and there's politics, okay? I love policy, I kind of hate politics, right? I hate the horse race, I hate the theater, I hate the optics. But the fact of the matter is, the optics are important in winning. They just are. So when you have Donald Trump go to East Palestine, Ohio after the train derailment and look out and pretend like he's looking out for the first responders, the firefighters, when he's at McDonald's and he says he's gonna buy everyone a burger, right? Optically, that's perfect, okay? That's how you give people the impression that you care about them. Now, behind the scenes, you look at his policies and it was a completely different story, but it doesn't matter. People, unfortunately, oftentimes vote based on vibes. What kind of vibe do you give them? And if you give people the vibe that you care about them, that you're gonna show up, they're likely to vote for you. When it came to that train derailment, which was a huge story, Biden's the president of the United States. He couldn't even be bothered to go. He didn't go there.
And by the way, on the substance, they also totally failed. They've done no safety precautions on those railway companies since, neither Buttigieg or Biden. Why? Because those guys donate to them. So then you wonder why you're losing black and Latino voters, because you're losing all the voters when you do things like that. And then finally, reason number three, Biden. 72% of the country says he's not gonna make it through a second term, that he's not physically healthy enough to make it through the second term. 72% is a giant number. It includes a lot of blacks and Latinos who are just the same as the rest of us going, that brother's not gonna make it, okay? And so, but you keep shoving Biden down their throats and go, oh yeah. Did you know that if you don't vote for Biden, you're not black? Remember, Biden said that. Biden said that to Charlemagne. Are you kidding me? So, okay, Democratic Party, it's your funeral, but the problem is it's also our funeral. Apparently, I'm the only person in the country who actually believes that democracy's on the line and this is the most important election, because they're not acting like it. Their numbers are awful, and what's your excuse for staying with Biden? Well, he beat Trump when he was 12 points higher, and he barely beat him. That means he's definitely going to lose. Well, he is the president, and everybody must bow their heads. No, on the left, you're not supposed to bow your head. Now he's lost minorities, or lost enough of them that it's unrecoverable. But guys, you like the iceberg, go ahead and run right into it. For the rest of you, tyt.com/dropout. I don't know, I'm desperate. Let's try to put pressure on this guy to drop out, because this ain't gonna get it done. So when you get President Trump, I guarantee you they blame us, but you see the numbers ahead of time, a year ahead of time. You could shoot the messenger, but the reality is this is the message being delivered by America, including now black and Latino voters.
All right, when we come back for the second hour of the show, we're gonna discuss, well, the latest in the auto workers strike and how Nikki Haley, a Republican presidential candidate, feels about them. Come back and I'll give you the details.
If you do, you're not really a reporter or a journalist, because reporters and journalists don't care what happens. I don't agree. That's not written anywhere, that's not a law. It's just a rule that they invented so that reporters didn't actually challenge the people that are in power. Well, we don't agree with that. We think we should challenge the people in power, that actually makes you a better journalist, not a worse one. Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. Here at TYT, we understand this. That's why we're not gonna price gouge you or use inflation as an excuse to raise our prices. A TYT membership is not your typical subscription, but basic membership is still just $4.99. So what do you get for that price? For starters, you're getting exclusive programming, unique exclusive designs from Shop TYT, access to a members only chat, giveaways, emojis, and so many other amazing perks. But most importantly, you're helping to make an impact. As a TYT member, you not only help us do the shows every day, but you drive real positive change in the process. In 2017, we helped to start Justice Democrats right here on TYT. That's a group that got a dozen progressives elected into Congress. That's amazing, you did that. Your support also funds TYT's very own investigative reporting. Just recently, our reporters exposed the Fellowship Foundation and pressured lawmakers into boycotting that bigoted event. Isn't that amazing? We raised over $30,000 for Jackson, Mississippi, and delivered clean water to thousands of people in need. Our petitions, polls, and community of activists help keep the corruption of Washington in check. That's the impact of what just $4.99 a month from our members can do. And we're just getting started. Positive change doesn't occur overnight, but with your contribution, we can make it happen together. I got pulled in. They told me, hey, listen, Cenk, we're insiders. We are the establishment. People in Washington tell me that they're concerned about your tone. We think that there's a better role for you, and it's not in 6 o'clock. The problem with the mainstream media is they're desperate to get access. They don't challenge the government. They don't challenge power. We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media.
Components that corrupt our politicians, I think, also corrupt mainstream media. It's really difficult for cable outlets to talk about things like income inequality, wealth inequality, when the advertisers that are funding their shows are the same corporations that want to ensure that the same system continues. People watch digital media or new media, they get a completely different message. They focus on the issues that matter or resonate more with the constituency. We need to know one thing. Is the corporate media incompetent?
Corporate media, I can't hear you. Establishment press, where are you? I can't hear you. But the media's position I am clear on. Everything is pro-war, so everything is just framed that way. In this case, I mean, war is inevitable, right? I mean, the defense contractors should get a couple more $1 trillion. You ready for the stunning results? Only 6% of people say they have a great deal of confidence in the press. Wakey, wakey, okay? Progressives don't like the media either. You know why? It's the corporate media. Corporate media sounds like a conspiracy. Wait. Who owns you? Multi-billion-dollar corporations, public corporations. Yeah, we're corporate media because corporations own us. Yeah, that's how it works.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive Shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
Back on TYT, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, and Lena Green with you guys. Lena, thank you for joining. Casper.
Well, Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley has some thoughts on the workers' strike, the auto workers in particular. Let's hear what she has to say.
When you have a president that's constantly saying, go union, this is what you get. The unions get emboldened and then they start asking for things that, that companies have a tough time doing.
If Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley keeps doing what Marjorie Greene and other Republicans have been up to, essentially marketing Biden as a pro-labor president, he might not need to do any campaigning at all for his reelection, because Nikki Haley, much like the other Republicans doing this, seem to be completely disconnected on what public opinion actually is on the issue of this particular strike, and honestly, any strike that's happened over the summer, over the last few years. Now, let's take a look at more of what she has to say, because honestly, I don't think Biden could have asked for a better rant that could help him politically.
When you have the most pro-union president and he touts that he is emboldening the unions, this is what you get. And I'll tell you who pays for it is the taxpayers. You know, here, from what I understand, the union is asking for a 40% raise. You know, the companies have come back with a 20% raise. I think any of the taxpayers would love to have a 20% raise and think that's great. But, you know, the problem is we're all gonna suffer from this. This is gonna cause things to go up. And, you know, this is gonna last a while. But, you know, when you have a president that's constantly saying, go union, this is what you get. The unions get emboldened and then they start asking for things that, you know, that companies have a tough time doing. And so I don't think government should get involved in this. These are private sector matters. But I do think the tone of how a president talks about unions and how a president emboldens them does play a role in this. And we're seeing what Biden has done play a role in this.
You don't think the government should get involved in private sector matters, Nikki Haley? Really? So all that corporate welfare that the federal government engages in, all the subsidies to oil companies, all of the government investment in private industry, you don't think the government should be doing that, huh? Fascinating. Really interesting. Now, of course, she's only referring to a very specific situation in which a member of the federal government shows some support for the workers rather than the corporation or the employers in this case. But despite what Nikki Haley was saying there, the fear mongering and the talking points about like, oh, we're gonna have to pay for this, our costs are gonna go up, our prices are gonna go up. That is the same incessant talking point the corporate media has been engaging in. And so has it had an impact on public opinion and how they feel toward the striking UAW workers? Let's take a look. Gallup found that 75% of Americans side with UAW members, compared to just 19% who side with the auto companies. Could it be that most Americans actually have to work for a living, and most Americans have experienced a system in which more and more of the wealth rises to the top, where ordinary average Americans honestly end up getting screwed? So she could keep playing this little game that worked back in the day. It ain't working now, and I love that it's not working now.
Yep, so let me go to graphic 2 because I want to say something about it. In 2021, GM CEO Mary Barra made over $29 million, Ford CEO made $23 million, and Stellantis CEO made $21 million. So I don't remember Nikki Haley coming out in 2021 and saying, that's gonna increase the price of our cars. What the hell? And by the way, it did. At that time, prices were up 30%. And not a peep from Nikki Haley, not a peep from a corporate Republican, not a peep from a corporate Democrat.
Government
when the CEO's shoveling tens of millions of dollars into their pocket, they're all good with it. And when it's costing you money, they have no problems. Guys, why would you be in favor of the 19% instead of the 75% when you're running for national office? That makes no political sense. Nikki Haley is not that dumb that she can't tell the 75 is larger than 19. No, they get all of their funding from corporations. She must go serve them. She is their servant. That's why she goes out and does marketing on behalf of corporate CEOs, even though it's gonna hurt her own campaign in the middle of that campaign. That's basically an ad from her saying, donors, please send me money. I'll do anything for you. I'll do anything. It reeks of desperation, and she's pathetic, and you can sense it in everything she says.
So we're gonna get to the big three and what they've been up to with all that money they've been making in just a moment. But before we do, I have to say, you're right, I don't think Nikki Haley's dumb, right?
No.
Now, she might be a smart person, she's kind of like a smart person. But the question is she blind to what ordinary Americans are facing and what ordinary Americans are feeling? And considering the bubble that she might be living in right now, she might just be totally unaware of how unbelievably popular these labor movements are at the moment, right?
Oh, there's no issue. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's another reason why she says these things that are so incredibly unpopular on national television, because in her cocktail parties, Everyone's on the side of the CEOs. No one is on the side of the unions or the workers.
The CEOs are at the cocktail party, okay? Let's just put it that way. So look, and look, this is why I think it would be a mistake to underestimate Trump, really, because the second Republican primary debate is set to take place next week. Trump is not gonna be there. You wanna know what he's gonna be doing instead? He's gonna be addressing workers, including potentially striking UAW workers. Now, we did the story about this yesterday, and we shared some quotes from the striking workers who ain't buying what he's selling, but that's anecdotal. I think overall, optically speaking, Trump understands that at least providing the illusion of caring about these workers is good politically. It's going to help him with his campaign. Whereas Nikki Haley goes on national television and essentially craps all over these striking workers who are just saying, look, we're the ones who are doing the work, generating the revenue, generating the profits. Can we please share in some of that wealth? When your CEOs are making $29 million, $23 million, $21 million in 1 year, I think it's justified for the workers to come out and say, I think we deserve a raise. Now, with that said, I wanna get to some new analysis that was done by the Americans for Tax Fairness. It was an analysis that looked into Ford and General Motors specifically, how much they paid in taxes, and how much they paid on stock buybacks and dividends for their shareholders. Over the past 5 years, Ford and General Motors have paid on average, or in average, combined tax rate of just 1% on over $42 billion in total pre-tax income. 1%. Now, I'll give you guys a moment. Take a look at your pay stubs. Take a look at what percentage you paid the federal government in taxes last year, or in your last paycheck. Guarantee you wasn't 1%. So remember when Trump said that he was going to, rework the tax system, do away with the loopholes and all the deductions and all the complicated stuff, and instead make the process streamlined, easy. He lowered the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. He never closed the loopholes. So he basically gave corporations a massive tax cut, which means that despite the insane amount of profits they make, they're able to take all sorts of deductions that in some cases even lead to a refund from the federal government when they file for their taxes. It is unbelievable to me. And you have Nikki Haley on national television crying on behalf of the CEOs. Okay.
Yeah, so guys, it's not like, hey, they barely squeaking by. They had $42 billion in pre-tax income, and they only pay 1%. These corporations in general, now their effective tax rate is down overall to 9%. Your taxes are sometimes double, triple that. If you live in California and you're like a doctor, it's probably quadruple that. Why are all the hardworking Americans paying all of the taxes, not just for the poor, that we understand, but also for the rich? So you're gonna make billions and billions of dollars, and you're not gonna pay any goddamn taxes. And the Nikki Haley's, and by the way, Trump is better on optics, but he's worse in reality than even Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley couldn't bring the corporate tax rate down from 35 to 21. Trump did that. Trump gave away more money to corporations than any other American president. He's like, Ronald Reagan, you think you're good at, pleasuring corporations? Step aside, Butch. Watch what I do on my hands and knees. Yeah. So that's who this bitch is, works for corporations. You know what his #1 campaign promise is now? Oh, I'm gonna lower corporate taxes to 15%. Corrupt son of a bitch running on Drain the Swamp. So he's a better liar. I can't believe, Nikki Haley, that Trump was a better liar than you, okay?
Based on Ford and GM's SEC reported employee income data, we project, and that's Americans for Tax Fairness that did this analysis, that the median auto worker could have been paying up to 16% in income taxes on their salary, while GM and Ford never paid more than 4.5% in the last half decade. Let's take a look at executive pay I really want to revisit that. Executive pay versus what the auto workers' pay has been looking like, right?
Oh, your car prices are going up because of the workers?
Right.
Please.
Executive pay grew over 3 times faster than auto workers' wages in the past 5 years.
That's nearly 4 times.
It's amazing.
So, but I don't see Nikki Haley or anyone on Fox News or anyone on CNBC going around blaming the CEOs. That is forbidden. If they blame the CEOs, there'd be hell to pay. They might, GM and Ford might pull their ads from those stations. Oh, that's how this game is played.
On top of the $652 million in executive salaries, GM and Ford paid the members of their corporate board of directors $51 million over those 5 years. Corporate board members as a whole work an average of 248 hours a year, meaning the total 27 board members of the 2 firms were each compensated at roughly $1,860 per hour in 2022 alone. And we're not done, there's more. Over that same period, GM and Ford paid out a combined total of $14 billion in dividends, 34 times more than they paid in taxes. Spent $3.6 billion on stock buybacks, 9 times more than they paid in taxes, and lavished $614 million on top company executives, 50% more than they paid in taxes. But they're the real victims. Those are the real victims, okay? The people hoarding all of that wealth for themselves. Those are the victims according to Nikki Haley. And we should be really mad at Joe Biden for what? For his rhetoric in support of the workers? And look, his NLRB is really good. His FTC with Lena Khan as the chair, definitely love it. But Joe Biden himself has had quite a few fumbles, optically speaking, when it comes to the labor issue. But thank you, Nikki Haley, for giving him credit on this issue that I don't even think he deserves.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll make an ad out of it and he'll seem like more of a hero. But give me one populist progressive and we will win any election, any national election in a landslide. I just look, what these politicians, they're so, all you need to do, give me one person comes out and says, I'm gonna get those sons of bitches and they're gonna pay their damn taxes. You pay your taxes every year, I'm gonna make them pay their taxes. That guy wins 60% of the vote. It's so easy, but we can't find one person with courage in this country, not one. Make them pay their goddamn taxes like we do and you will easily win. Oh no, but what will the donors say? Nothing but wall-to-wall corruption in Washington.
All right, we'll be back with the latest study on how Americans are feeling about the government and how it functions.
Back on TYT, Kent Carlotto on YouTube Super Chat wrote in, when they start saying prices will go up, I don't hear economic reality, I hear extortion threats. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, thank you. Built to Help wrote in, Trump is a salesman. They don't remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel. And that's how salesmen do their art, and that is what Trump is doing. And that is why he's winning over people with no substance at all. But Democrats are like, what's a salesman? What's marketing? What's politics? Samantha Toto writes in, Cenk, what do you say regarding Dems breaking out with historical special election wins by a historic number of points, leading Republicans in red districts even. Do you think it's saying something that these polls aren't factoring in? No, Samantha, Democrats have massive advantages right now, including most importantly, Roe. And that is why they're doing so well in those districts. That's why they did so well in the midterms. But the Biden polls are also, those polls do not conflict. One poll is testing generic Democrats. The other poll is testing specifically Joe Biden. Generic Democrats, they're like, oh, you're in favor of Roe, et cetera. I'm with you, I'm against the Republicans that are trying to take away my rights. Biden, no, I don't want him. And all the Democrats go, I don't care that the American people don't want him. We're gonna shove him down their throats and we're gonna go with the terrible candidate who's massively losing right now. Okay. Even though, by the way, it actually makes it worse because the generic Democrat would have a huge lead over Trump. But no, let's go with the worst candidate. Okay.
The problem with the Democratic Party is that they have this antiquated way of thinking where rather than giving a damn about what the outcome of the election might be, or more importantly, how Democratic voters feel, they feel that, no, next in line is Kamala Harris.
Who cares who's next in line?
Obviously,
I know, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
But I mean, so there's like this weird, I think it's simmering right now and it might blow up at some point, but I think there is a divide within the Democratic Party about the Kamala issue or the Kamala question, right? She's not popular, I don't know what to say. She hasn't performed well as vice president. Her public appearances have been one disaster after another.
Guys, like, I get it, for people in power, they think, who is the next person who is the most powerful? Let's all bow down to them. If you're in the audience and you're a Democrat, who gives a goddamn who they think is next in line? No, we pick the best candidate, not what your stupid authority hierarchy says. What are we, Republicans? All right, Angel Corsi writes in, as a Latino here, the creepiest thing I've seen watching Latinos go from trusting God family politicians dead last to Trump God family. It's real. Unfortunately, that's true. Someone else wrote in saying African Americans would be conservative if the Republicans weren't so racist. All right, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Missy Hartman. Missy, thank you for joining us, we appreciate it. And Ingram gifted 20 Young Turks memberships on YouTube. Ingram, you're a total hero, we appreciate you as well. Casper.
Let's get right to our next story.
Circus, liars, joke, self-centered, crap, nasty, toxic, deceit, farcical.
CNN's Abby Phillip just read off a few of the words that Americans most commonly associate with politics in the United States, and that's according to a recent Pew study. Now, you probably have guessed that words like awesome and productive wouldn't show up on a list like that. But even we were a little surprised at how bleak that list was. In fact, let's watch the list and Abby Phillip reciting it in its entirety.
So Pew asked Americans to describe the state of the United States politics in just one word. And I want you to listen to some of the most common responses. And I have to warn you here, some of these are not kid-friendly. Divisive, chaos, corrupt, messy, crazy, bad, sad, dysfunctional, broken, disgusting, ridiculous, petty, partisan, embarrassing, hypocrisy, hellish, crooked, sucks, fractured, circus, liars, joke, self-centered, crap, nasty, toxic, deceit, farcical, convoluted, rigged, combative, dumpster fire, aggressive, extreme, poor, disaster, disgrace, unproductive, and, well, effed.
No, I'm actually gonna take back what I said earlier. I'm not surprised. I mean, when you look at every major issue that impacts ordinary Americans' lives, Congress certainly has abandoned Americans on those issues. They're more interested in their theater, they're more interested in investigations, hearings, and the hearings are never about actually looking into and learning more about an issue that they might pass legislation on. When was the last time they had a hearing where after the fact, they came up with legislation and voted on it? No, the hearings are just part of the theater. It's all about them like puffing up their chest and giving you the illusion that they're representing you, that they're fighting for you, that they're working for you, when in reality, they're doing no such thing, no such thing. So yeah, that list doesn't surprise me. And just to give you a little more information about what Pew did, that was taken from 2 Pew surveys conducted in June and July of this year, each of which sampled many thousands of Americans, 5,000 and 8,000 respectively. So there are more results from that survey that I think are worth going into, but Cenk, what are your thoughts?
So the only thing surprising about this is how mainstream media is reacting to it. They're like, whoa, did you know this? Yeah, of course. You know how many people, what percentage of people used positive words to describe politics right now? 2%. 2%. That's probably the top 2%. They're like, wow, I don't know what you guys are talking about. This is working out terrific for us. But mainstream media is part of the establishment. So they're never going to admit to you, oh yeah, we're the problem. They just report that as like, isn't this amazing? Is it, oh, it's probably about the gridlock or something. If they were agreeing to bipartisan corporate deals, then people would love politicians. No, they don't love politicians, they don't love you. You guys are all part of the crooked system that shovels all the money towards corporate rule and screws the rest of us. And that's the least surprising thing on earth.
So let's get into some of the other findings in these surveys. So the Pew Research Center also found that just 4% of US adults say the political system is working extremely or very well. Just 4%.
They all live in DC or New York.
Or they're the executives of some company that is performing very well thanks to certain tax cuts and goodies
subsidies.
And subsidies, exactly. But there's more. Another 23% say it's working somewhat well. About 6 in 10, 63% express not too much or no confidence at all in the future of the US political system. 28% express unfavorable views of both parties. I totally fall in that category. The highest share in 3 decades of polling, and a comparable share of adults, 25%, do not feel well represented by either party. They would be correct. They are not well represented by either party. And here's one big reason why Americans think that our government is so dysfunctional. Cenk, you will enjoy this because it validates something that you talk about all the time. 86% say the following is a good description of politics. Republicans and Democrats are more focused on fighting each other than on solving problems. 57% also believe that conflicts between Republicans and Democrats receive too much attention these days, and 78% say there is too little focus on important issues facing the country. But a lot of them are also concerned about campaign finance, basically the corruption that's now been baked into our system. I'm gonna give you the specific numbers on that in just a moment, but any comments on what I've shared with you so far?
Yeah, so whenever I talk about money in politics, that's the next thing we're gonna get to. In the old days, what would happen is people would say like, oh, Cenk, that's just a process issue, and the American people aren't interested in that. And they think things are working perfectly, or generally fine. So don't focus on that, they don't care about it. Well, you're gonna find out in a second how much they care about it. But I will tell you, I've been now, because of the book, going on tons of podcasts from right wing to left wing, okay? And now people don't say that anymore, at least in the podcasting world, in the non-mainstream media world. And anytime you bring up money in politics, both right wingers and left wingers go, yep, that's definitely the problem. Before, when I said they were bribes, people would be like, oh, how dare you? Now they're like, oh, obviously, you're totally right. They're obviously bribes. Thank you. Now let's show you what the American people think.
So an overwhelming percentage of the survey takers, 85%, hold the view that the cost of political campaigns makes it hard for good people to run for office. It's 1,000% true.
It's impossible.
Along with the hatchet job the corporate press does on anyone who's an outsider who might want to run for public office.
100%.
Yeah.
And by the way, the confluence of both of those things. When you run for office and you don't have much money, the press will then not only give incredible praise to your opponent. He has raised $1.2 million. He's the leading candidate in this race. Makes it sound super credible, right? But when you come in and you don't have any money, you're a carpenter, you're a librarian or something, they're like, not a credible candidate. She's only raised $27,000, which by the way for you is a ton of money that you cobbled together, right? Like, not a credible candidate. Poor people, middle class people, not credible. People who take bribes from rich people, very credible, according to our press.
In fact, 81% say members of Congress do a very or somewhat bad job of keeping their personal financial interests separate from their work in Congress. Large majorities say big campaign donors, 80%, and lobbyists and special interests, 73%, have too much influence on decisions made by members of Congress. And they're right. So did anything good come out of this survey? All of these responses are obviously very negative. There's hope in one area. 63% think ordinary Americans want to make the political system work well.
Well, we all want it to work well. I mean, I hope that that number should be higher. We want democracy to work. We want the system to work. The Constitution is good. Democracy is good. Look. Sorry, but I got to mention my book here. Chapter 4 explains what went wrong. You guys never voted for this corruption. There was never a vote on it. This Chamber of Commerce, which represents companies, wrote a memo saying we should take over the Supreme Court, and with just a couple of activist judges, we can actually just basically upend democracy, legalize bribery, and then we buy all of them. And that's exactly what they did. So that 80% number that you see there, where they're saying, yeah, the big donors control politics, 80% of Americans believe that. I'm surprised again that number is that low. If you ask it in other ways, I bet it gets above 90%, right? In Washington, which I'm about to go to next week, you ask that same question. I've done this, not just dozens, maybe hundreds of times. And people in Washington, when you suggest that, they're outraged. They're like, oh, you mean that, are you saying they don't have real opinions, that they're just working for their donors? God damn right I'm saying that, but I'm not saying it. 80% of Americans are saying it. But go ahead, continue to be shocked every time the same exact poll comes out.
Well, Michael Wolff has a new book out that sheds some light on what's been taking place behind the scenes over at Fox News. When we come back from the break, I'll share the details on that story and more.
On the social break here, Pam Durgett writes in our member section, yeah, the status quo was okay when most people could afford a house and a couple of cars in there and sent their kids to college. Exactly. It's not okay now, and but I keep telling you guys about people that I talk to, because the privilege in this country, they live in a bubble. They don't know about you. They don't know any of you. They have no idea that you can't afford a house. They don't know that at all, and they don't care. Art Guy writes, and the irony here is the media have been largely responsible for bottling up public resentment of politics and now appear shocked by the results of their work. That's an excellent description. Chris Moore writes in, you two are on point. It'll be hard to choose which sections to post later because it's all fire tonight. Thank you, Chris, for saying that. Magical Trevor wrote in, hey TYT, thanks for being an educator for adults. I'm a high school teacher, and trust me, you are educators. Sometimes your students don't listen and fight you on your directions, but hold true to your vision on topics, and maybe one day your students will truly understand what you're saying and it will change their life. Well, thank you for saying that. I don't look at people as my students at all, but I hear you and I thank you for the compliment. Bernie Ismailita wrote in, what happened? Went to buy a signed book today and they were sold out. Reading the book now, but wanted a signed copy for posterity. No guys, this is the member section. So if you're a member, we put more copies up on shoptyt.com. But so how do you get to it? tyt.com/notice if you're a member, tyt.com/notice, and that'll allow you to buy the signed copy of Justice is Coming through Shop TYT. Thank you for caring enough to ask that question and for trying to do that. And by the way, if you're a member, I did a number of episodes with Nick about the book, and it's like fun little behind the scenes facts. What was my favorite snack? How much did I procrastinate while writing the book? Who's my favorite author? All that stuff. So check that out. Those are the specials for the members. tyt.com/join to become a member. Or of course, hit the join button below on YouTube. On Twitch, Undead Pixels gifted 2 subs, and we appreciate you. SKO9 wrote in, the right wing is fine with punishing immigrants until it's time to do manual labor. Then they beg them to stay, which is very true. AJ Nestor says about Democrats and Biden, even trying and failing would have helped an awful lot. Yes, they don't even understand that simple idea about politics.
There's a super important super chat that you're ignoring, Cenk, that I'm going to read from Tim Forrester.
Okay. Ready.
Tim Forrester writes in and says, Anna, as an ornithologist, I don't know if I said that right.
Yeah.
I am very excited that you're into bird watching. You should be birding somewhere tropical. So many amazing different birds. I need to do that. That needs to happen. You need to give me the month off.
Oh.
Necessary.
What are you doing to me, guys? What are you doing?
Sabbatical. It's for research.
All right, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. And I know you want me to read one line of a review of Justice is Coming. Okay, fine, I'll do it, okay? The book is so good at breaking things down so a non-political person can understand how the US government works and how the system has been designed to work against the average American and only work for the wealthy and corporation. So, and then he goes on to say, but it gives you hope. So thank you guys. You could do reviews at Goodreads too. tyt.com/justice to get a copy. Casper.
All right. A new book by author Michael Wolff is chock full of some pretty salacious behind the scenes stories that allegedly took place over at Fox News. And while honestly, I'm skeptical about some of the allegations here, I think it's worth at least discussing them. So the Daily Beast got a sneak peek, an advanced copy, if you will, of the book. It's titled The Fall, The End of Fox News and the Murdoch Dynasty. Now Murdoch seems to be doing pretty well, right? So while Fox News definitely got hit with that defamation suit, it's still on the air. But nonetheless, let's give you the details on what he revealed in the book. So we'll tell you ahead of time that people have already basically challenged the veracity of some of his claims, and Wolff's past books also dealt with similar treatment. But Wolff claims that all the principal characters were contacted for comment ahead of publishing. The book covers drama including Fox handling of the Dominion defamation lawsuit over its 2020 election lies, its post-election fights with Donald Trump, its firing of Tucker Carlson, and also the Murdoch family's turmoil. And let's get into it. Let's get into some of the juicy accounts here. So during one of the chapters, Wolff writes that prior to being fired from his primetime spot, Tucker Carlson considered a run for president in order to escape from Fox News's contract. Now, Wolff alleged stories about Tucker, and they get crazier, including this. With Fox urging its stars to be open-minded about Ron DeSantis, then Murdoch's favored candidate for 2024. Wolff writes, Carlson and his wife Susie welcomed DeSantis and his wife Casey to their Florida home for lunch. Despite hoping to impress Carlson, arguably a top GOP kingmaker, the presidential hopeful and Trump rival failed the Susie Carlson test during the visit, Wolff claims. Okay, so what does that mean? What is the Susie Carlson test? Let me just say, women do be running things, okay? Even when you guys think you're running things, women do be running things. But nonetheless, the DeSantis couple allegedly failed to read the room, especially with Carlson's wife, a genteel, stay-at-home woman here in her own house, Wolf writes. For 2 hours, Ron DeSantis sat at her table talking in an outdoor voice, indoors, I totally believe that, failing to observe any basics of conversation ritual or propriety, not sure what that means, reeling off in an unself-conscious list of his programs and initiatives and political accomplishments. So look, it doesn't shock me that he has trouble reading the room. He is a little socially awkward, but I don't really know, like, what does a conversation ritual or propriety mean? Like, what does that mean exactly?
I think that what I got out of it was you go and first you talk about your kids, you talk about football, whatever. You're having a normal human conversation, and then you slip in, oh yeah, like we did this in Florida and we did that, right? That's normal propriety, right? You don't go into someone's house for dinner and come in and go, do you know what I did in Florida? We reduced the budget by 17.3%. It's like, all right, brother, all right, take it easy, right? He just does, look, when
But you know what, sorry to interrupt you, but you know what, I kind of, listen, we all know what this dinner's about, okay?
Yeah.
And I kind of, even though I think it's because he's socially awkward, I do respect the fact that DeSantis is like, listen, I'm not really interested in, we're not friends, okay? You're the Republican kingmaker. I'm here to tell you why you should support me and promote me. So let me talk about everything I've done. Like, I kind of respect that, right? Like the game, that little game. I don't like the game. That's why I don't do the game.
No,
I don't do the network. I do not do the game. Okay.
Anna's good at a lot of things. The game is not one of them.
No.
Okay? She's gonna get straight to the point. She's gonna come inside your house and go, this is what I did with the budget.
No, I'm not even gonna show up to the dinner. That's the problem. That's why I'm not a politician.
For sure. Look, Michael Wolff's problem is that he's been caught a couple of times on things that were not corroborated, right? But he has done a lot of things that were corroborated. So it's not like, oh, it's all trash, otherwise we wouldn't tell you, right? That's the problem though, when you get caught on some things that don't pan out, then we don't not just believe 12% of what you wrote, we have trouble believing 100% of what you wrote.
True, yeah.
So he's the boy who cried wolf, if you will. I'm here all week, kind of. Actually, I'm going to New York, coming to my book reading.
Oh my God.
TYT.com/events. Buy the book at TYT.com/justice. Okay. Seriously. Okay, but with Wolf, so here's how I read him. Like I asked Noam Chomsky, how do you read mainstream media when you're the best critic of mainstream media and know that they are trying to deceive you in a lot of ways? And he says, you just look for the facts, you ignore all the context, you look at what they're omitting, etc. He gave like a guidebook on how to do it. And in this case, when I read Wolf, I think, what is corroborated by other things that we know about that person? And that makes it more likely. Like the outdoor voice inside a dinner and awkward, that tracks, right? The kicking the dog, like, nah, I don't know.
Wait, we haven't told them about the kicking of the dog yet.
I know, we buried the lead, go ahead. Let alone who Hannity's apparently sleeping with, interesting.
So apparently during the dinner, there's an allegation that DeSantis was not kind to the Carlson family pet, okay? DeSantis pushed the dog under the table. Had he kicked the dog? Susie Carlson's judgment was clear. She did not ever want to be anywhere near anybody like that ever again. By the way, if this story is actually true, I'm 1000% with Susie Carlson. No, nobody puts Charlie in a corner.
Oh,
okay, no.
That would be a mistake that you could never recover from. Like if you mess with Charlie, Anna's true love. I mean, of course, there are other loves, parents and husband and all that.
Yeah, they're good. They're good. Yeah.
But you mess with Charlie, you are not going to get that endorsement. It's not even going to be close. She's going to send money to your opponent.
Yes, 1000%. But let me continue with the rest of the allegation here. So she would never want to see him again. Her husband agreed. DeSantis, in Carlson's view, was a fascist. No, I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I can't. How are you gonna?
No.
The idea that Carlson is gonna think of DeSantis as a fascist for allegedly pushing the dog.
It doesn't track.
It doesn't.
If he said that, it'd be really weird. Like him saying racist stuff, not really weird, right?
Yeah.
Calling someone else fascist, yeah, I'd be really surprised by that.
Both DeSantis and Tucker Carlson have said that this story is inaccurate, that this didn't happen.
But they would say that no matter what. So that doesn't tell you much.
Maybe.
Sometimes it tells you when they don't respond. In fact, in one of the sections here, they talk about how Jerry Hall, right, the former wife of Rupert Murdoch, yelled at him at one point about being a homophobe and told other guests, like, ignore him, he's just old. And when they asked her, that's his ex-wife, and when they asked her for comment, no comment. That means that's probably true.
All right, so let's skip ahead right now because I want to get to how Murdoch allegedly feels about Hannity. I was highly amused by this. Again, I don't know if there's actual credibility to this story, but I want to believe it's true because it's hilarious. So the Murdoch's alleged feelings toward Sean Hannity is also featured pretty heavily in the book. And so throughout the book, a recurring motif is that Fox News star and Trump confidant Sean Hannity is viewed within Murdoch circles as a moron. Just like straight to the point. Straight to the point. At one point, Wolf alleges, Rupert Murdoch called Hannity the R-word slur.
Tracks.
Yeah, that definitely tracks. So when Murdoch brought reports of Hannity's on and off-air defense of Fox's post-election coverage, he perhaps seemed to justify his anchor. And then he uses the slur, like most Americans. Wolf writes in one chapter that notes how Hannity had pushed Fox to stick by Trump. And so before Murdoch fired Carlson, this is amazing. As Fox was facing Dominion's defamation lawsuit, Rupert Murdoch apparently considered axing Hannity as a way of giving Dominion like a sacrificial lamb, right? So he was actually considering firing Hannity before firing Tucker Carlson. As a way to justify the hypothetical firing, Wolf adds, Lachlan Murdoch proposed citing the host's previously secret romantic relationship with Fox and Friends co-host Ainsley Earhart.
Jerome.
Using ex-CNN CEO Jeff Zucker's firing as precedent.
You know, how many times have I said, hey, look, lots of sexual harassment going on at Fox News, but you never hear anything about Sean Hannity, so apparently he's the one guy that at least doesn't do that. Now, we don't know that that's sexual harassment, that could be totally consensual.
Yeah, it appears to be a consensual relationship. Right. And look, they both were divorced at the time.
Look, that's totally up to them.
They're both hosts as well, right?
Yeah.
Like the thing that made the Jeff Zucker situation shaky was that he was the head of CNN and the person he was having a relationship with worked under him. So, it was, I mean, she was also, in a high role within CNN, but there was still a power dynamic issue, whatever. So,
yeah. So look, in this case, it's more similar to the ABC story. The two anchors were having a consensual relationship after they got divorced and they got fired for no goddamn reason. That was a sexual harassment, 100% consensual. Neither one reported the other one, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not trying to bust Hannity's chops on it, but it turns out he was also dating someone in the building, right? That's a very common thing. You remember the story about Jesse Waters and how he let the air out of the tires of someone that was working for him.
Producer's tires.
Yeah, producer, and then eventually married her and divorced his wife, et cetera. So that stuff tracks, that's happening for sure. Now, in terms of Murdoch calling Hannity a moron and worse, that also tracks. That tracks in two different ways. One, I don't know if you know the Succession 100% based on Rupert Murdoch and Fox News. And they took real stories, and some of the stories in Wolf's book are like straight out of Succession. And so they have great disdain for the hosts, they think. But to me, the most damning part was, if this is true, this is the worst of all. Murdoch said that Hannity was a moron like the average American. Oof.
Yeah. Like most Americans, that's what he said.
Yeah.
Let's go back to graphic 7 real quick.
Yeah.
So he perhaps seemed to justify his anchor. He's the R word, like most Americans, Wolf writes in one chapter that notes how Hannity had pushed Fox to stick by Trump.
So Murdoch's a right winger, and so that's part of why Fox News is right wing. But the other reason is Murdoch's just a businessman, and he thinks, I'm gonna go find suckers, I'm gonna tell them what they wanna hear, and then they're gonna give me money. And so he views his audience not as someone he's serving, but people that are serving him. And he's gonna get rich off of them because he thinks they're the R word.
Okay, but
right?
I have a real problem with viewing Americans, like most Americans, as morons. And the reason why I have a problem with that, especially coming from a piece of crap like Rupert Murdoch, is prior to Fox News, prior to what Rupert Murdoch did with Fox News in America, Americans trusted the media, relatively speaking. When they watched the news, they thought they were getting accurate information. So here's this piece of garbage intentionally misinforming them through politically charged, his politically charged agenda. And then he turns around and laughs at them for being suckers, for trusting the garbage that he's having his hosts spew.
Yep.
No, F off. Seriously, F off. It's just, anyway. All right, let's move on. That really irritates me.
Of course, but guys, the last thing on it is, this is the problem with Fox News. They don't mean it. They have more to say for their own viewers than they have of anyone else, of Democrats, of anyone else. And to me, even though I don't agree with their viewers, it's more stomach churning to hear that.
Yeah, it totally is. So Cenk, I think that you should read more reviews about your book.
Oh my God.
And you should read more comments because we don't have enough time to do another story, which is super irritating. But nonetheless, go ahead.
Okay, now you're gonna blame it on me. Oh, should I read more reviews? Okay. No, seriously, I'll read your comments in a second. But these are on Goodreads. If you guys like the book, please go on there, review it, give it 5 stars if you like it. If you don't, shh, okay? I'm playing. Anyway, that guy that I told you about, he wrote about how everybody should read it, and he said, it's not a red versus blue problem, it's the greed of corporations versus humanity that is the problem. The reason they'll tell you something is impossible is because they don't want you to try. The reason I want to read that to you guys is that's a huge part of the book, guys. The part of what corporate media tells you is don't try, okay? It's so uncool to try, you're not cool, okay? And I was on a bus here, I'll go outside of all this and give you guys an interesting story that's not in the book. So I was on a bus with the rest of the press following Bernie in 2016. And when I was on that bus, the rest of the press, they loved wallowing in cynicism and pessimism. And the minute that anyone was hopeful or believed that they could deliver something for the American people, they would have such enormous disdain for them. They'd be like, oh, look at them trying. Like that's gonna work. Because they wanted to spirit you. It's groupthink, it's not a memo. Okay, here's another reviewer. He reveals how American policies have been captured by corporate greed on both sides. More importantly, Cenk offers a clear path to make things better, a must read. One last one for you guys, and this one's easy. The book is totally awesome. All right, tyt.com/justice. I promise I won't do this forever. The book just came out, this is the first week. We're all trying to get on the bestseller list. The first week's the most important week. Thank you for putting up with me, guys, and thank you for buying it. I couldn't appreciate you more. Let's go to your comments. Oh, look at this, it's another one about the book. No, all right, I'll read a non-book one. Let's go to, just Patricia in New York writing, keep bringing it all to the table. Cenk and Anna, great reporting. Let's go to Twitch. Danger Mouse 17 said there was a time in this country when corporations paid 70% or more in taxes, and they did it patriotically. Whether they meant it or not, they certainly acted like they were being patriotic about it. And yes, the corporate tax rate was gigantic. And by the way, that is when we built the greatest middle class the world has ever seen.
Yeah.
Right now they pay a comically low rate, and their plan to take over the country worked. Chapter 4. Okay, the OG Mountain Dragon says Dems won't have Bernie to blame this time. All the blame is on them. Well, no, brother, I wish that was true, but if Biden loses, you think they're not gonna blame other people? You think they're gonna say, oh, that was Biden's fault? 0% chance of that. the beloved corporate Democrats must always be worshipped. They'll blame Cornel West, they'll absurdly blame Marianne Williamson, they'll blame literally us, right? And they'll say, oh, if he hadn't done that petition, the American people were loving him. No, the polling showing the exact opposite. Avenger Dragon 89 says, didn't Trump leave without paying the McDonald's bill? So no, actually, fairest show in America, he actually did pay the McDonald's bill. It was the next time he went to a restaurant and he said, free drinks on me, and then left and didn't pay. He's a dine and dasher, okay, nothing but false promises. But in McDonald's case, he actually did pay. Not a Dragon writes in, Anna, about how we could have done the dinner. Quote, the dinner could have been an email.
Dude, yes. It's my favorite meme.
Okay, and Tuffy's asking if the big question of the day, will Cenk participate in an Ice Cream Wednesday postgame? Well, you're gonna find out if you remember, tyt.com/join or hit that join button because we're going there now. Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started, people would start giving us directions and say, okay, the mics are too large, move them. Turn them into lav mics. I mean, they were incredible. And then one guy walked in and gave us a really expensive switcher and said, you guys need this, and walked out.